Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Coming up next, it's a regular feature on the programme, although whenever I use the phrase regular feature, I'm reminded that I always forget to actually flag it up as a regular feature. But here is a new regular feature on the programme. What exactly am I supposed to be angry about? You know, I'm a rubbish tabloid journalist. I was rubbish at being a tabloid journalist when I was actually a tabloid journalist, but I'm quite a good student of the tactics that tabloid journalists employ. They're kind of Orwellian 2-minute hate. I know that you're supposed to hate transgender toilets because trans people are a bit different and we haven't got used to their differences yet. Some people, of course, are still going to hate on the basis of colour, hate on the base of religion, which we've been talking about, of course, for the last hour, although a lot of Muslim people listening will probably be thinking, well, when's he going to talk about all the hatred that's been directed at us at the moment? So I get all of that. Here's a target. They don't deserve it, but here, hate on them because you'll buy a paper if I make you feel really angry and full of hate. But students who paint over poems or who want statues in their university quadrangle to be moved, or who very silly students, for my money they're silly, okay, who launched some sort of protest at a cafeteria dedicated to Winston Churchill somewhere in South London. There are about 20 of them. Presumably this story at Manchester University involving a poem by Rudyard Kipling being painted over, that now involves 6 students with a paint pot being national news, a whole page of the Daily Mail. And it's the students that are supposed to be the snowflakes, not the elderly men who are having a fit of the vapours over 6 students with a paint pot covering over a poem in their own student union, a room into which none of these people getting cross have ever even walked or ever will walk. It's mad. And I'm going to unravel it, unwrap it, and understand it by 12 noon, at which point, mystery hour. Stories that would be getting a lot more attention if the madness of Brexit wasn't engulfing our collective body politic. This story about Joe Swinson being paired up with Brandon, what's his name? The Brandon, what? It's not Brandon Lee, is it? Anyway, being paired up with a prominent Conservative for a vote, for a couple of those Brexit votes the other night. And then he turned up to vote, despite the fact that he was supposed to stay out of it to cancel out Joe Swinson's vote in the other direction. Times has done amazing work on this, which is leading us, we haven't arrived there yet, to the conclusion that the Conservatives' chief whip may have lied through his teeth about this. We're going to catch up on that story in about half an hour or so. Very much seems to be moving into that category we've defined over the last few weeks of things that would be huge news if we hadn't all gone mad because of Brexit. I mean, an awful lot of the Brexit news would be huge. Rolls-Royce revealing that it's stockpiling. It will make the business pages of the Times. It's never going to make a full page of the Daily Mail because the Daily Mail have encouraged their readers to vote for this act of national self-harm. So they can never, ever turn around and say, oops. And that means they can't report proper news about their head of Airbus, for example, warning again yesterday that even the baby step of positivity that the Chequers Agreement seemed to represent had already been undone. But what does the head of Airbus know about running Airbus? You need to speak to Nadine Dorries about running an international aerospace company. Do not speak to the people who run international aerospace companies. So what does constitute a big enough story to cover the whole of page 31 of the Daily Mail today? Some students who painted a wall in their student union. What? I mean, how desperate would you be to distract from the fact that you have encouraged and presided over probably the biggest political aberration in the history of our country, to try now to get your readers to get cross about some students with a paintbrush? And look, I'm strong on this. I find it pathetic. But equally, I could be wrong. I am wrong, often. Wish I was wrong a bit more often, to be honest with you, but I am wrong often, and maybe there is a really strong argument for why grown men and women should be getting angry about some students painting a wall in their student union. The wall that previously had written on it Rudyard Kipling's brilliant poem, If. Poem that, well, you won't believe me if I try and do the whole thing off by heart, because you'll just think that I've got it written down in front of me. But that's a slight red herring. It's a poem I know well. It's a poem I love. Kipling is a writer that I think is magnificent. I'm aware of some of his 19th century attitudes. I make no apology for calling them that. Worlds change, people change, attitudes change, sensibilities change. Rudyard Kipling's views on things like colonialism and even racial superiority no longer hold water in the 21st century. There will still be some headbangers that subscribe to them, but they are now headbangers. Rudyard Kipling was simply part of the herd back in the 19th century. And that's why these students have written over the poem. They've painted over the poem, despite the fact that this particular poem makes no reference whatsoever to colonialism or race. And that's just what students do. So the question this hour, well, we've only got half an hour left on it, that's a shame, I do apologise, is what exactly am I supposed to be angry about? Which, of course, is one side of the coin, and the other side of the same coin would be, I suppose, if you want to ring me and tell me why you're angry, then you can, but I don't think you are anymore. I genuinely don't think you are angry anymore. I think you were angry when you first saw the story. I think the way that it's been written in the Mail, snowflake students censor racist Kipling. That's designed to make you angry, but you haven't asked yourself why you're angry. Why am I angry about some students painting a wall in Manchester? Oh, well, they told me to be angry. Yeah, but why are you angry? Well, it's political correctness. Oh, no, I'm on James's show. I can't say that. Everyone will laugh at me. Why are you so angry? Well, why are you so angry about some students painting a wall in Manchester? Well, does it got anything to do with transgender toilets? No, it's got nothing to do with transgender toilets. Foreign aid? No, it's got nothing to do with foreign aid either, mate. Why are you angry about some students painting a wall in Manchester? If you are still angry, and you know why, I would love to hear from you on 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. Here you go. Here's a bloke from something called the Campaign for Real Education. Oh, dear. You ring these people up, and I sometimes, dare I say, hear LBC producers doing the same in the desperate attempt to find someone who will come on and be furious without ever being asked why they're furious. Here's a bloke from the Campaign for Real Education. This is outrageous cultural vandalism. Kipling is a much-beloved poet. These students are closing off access to one of our most popular poems, and it is liberal fascism. They are snowflakes who should not... So how does painting a wall in a room in Manchester stop anyone going into Waterstones and buying the collected works of Rudyard Kipling, mate? Oh, well, it doesn't. But it's liberal fascism. It's not, is it? It's a wall with some paint on it. And some students have decided democratically that they don't like the words on the wall, so they're going to paint over them. I think they're silly sausages. But what on earth am I supposed to get angry about? Some students painting a wall in Manchester. Page 31 of the Daily Mail. Business leaders queuing up to warn that a no-deal Brexit is going to cripple this country in a way that will take generations to recover. Not a whisper in the Daily Mail. Come on. Phone lines are open. 0345 6060 973. And if you're not prepared to ring me up, because you're not angry anymore, which is great, you can send me a cheque. It's very good for your health. Your doctor will be grateful to me as well, so will your wife. So you're not angry anymore because you hadn't actually stopped to ask yourself what on earth you were supposed to be angry about. Let's try and work out why it works. Because, you know, why does this work? I understand why racism works. I understand why homophobia works. Fear of the unknown. What is this a fear of? What do you think, if you're not one of them, what are these people who've been successfully encouraged to get furious frightened of? What is the future that you and I can't see that they think painting a wall in Manchester is leading us inexorably towards? So why does this kind... Because I get the 2-minute hate almost always, but I don't actually get it with this new breed of... complaint, this new breed of the furiously outraged, the people who claim to be cross about people being cross, but are 100 times crosser than half a dozen students with a paintbrush using it to cover a wall in Manchester. Why would anyone get angry about this? Let's try and work it out. Martin's in New Malden. Martin, what would you like to say?
Hello, James. I think the reason people get angry... I'm not angry about this, but I think the reason...
Were you angry about it before?
No, never.
No, can you prove it? How can you prove that you weren't angry? Because people were very successfully encouraged to get angry by how this story is written. They paint over classic verses, put on university wall to inspire hard work. Say people who've never read Rudyard Kipling in their life. But okay, so you're not angry, but you are going to have a go at answering some of my questions.
I am going to have a go. People of my generation, I think Kipling, I might be wrong, wrote Jungle Book.
He did indeed.
Yeah. So I grew up with the Disney films and the books, and for people of my generation, I'm 54.
He didn't write the film, mate.
No, he didn't write the film. No. Sure. Disney had a role in that. Yeah,
yeah, and the song as well.
But I think the reason people are angry is it's almost it's the question in the sense of Britishness. You know, what gives you the right to say Kipling was a racist? You know, it's one of our greatest writers.
He was a racist. No one would deny that.
Sure,
but it was normal in the 19th century to believe in racial superiority. So you can't get angry about. Well, you can get angry about history, but the white man's burden is a clear portrayal of other races as inferior to white people.
Sure, and you know.
So who would get cross about that then? Except, I guess, racists.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, if anybody, and this is what annoys me about these types of debates, people have an opinion on something without even doing the basic knowledge research. You know, just doing a simple check. I mean, Google's a wonderful thing, right? You haven't got to do a lot of work these days to work out what's going on in the world, right? And they just can't be bothered to even do that.
Yeah, but what's the appeal? What's the pleasure? I mean, we did this in the last hour. What do they get out of being so angry? What do the sort of gammon army get in return for their ignorant fury? What does it make them feel better about?
I think it makes them feel better about being who they are. You know, that these sorts of things actually make them annoyed, and they might feel alive.
I don't think anyone's annoyed anymore. I genuinely don't. I don't think anyone. I'll check the social media feed in a minute, the Twitter feed in a minute. But as soon as it's pointed out to you that you're getting cross about 6 students with a paintbrush painting a wall in Manchester that you didn't even know existed 2 hours ago, then people presumably just feel a bit silly, don't they?
Absolutely. I mean, there are far too many things going on in our country at the moment.
Head of Airbus warning that we're heading for absolute economic disaster. No, that's not a story. 6 students painting a wall in Manchester. Oh, my God, it's the end of civilization as we know it. If you were angry, and now you're not angry because, well, you're sensible and you've listened to an explanation of what's gone on here and you realise that you shouldn't have been angry in the first place, give me a call and tell me what you were angry about. 0345 6060 973. When I was at university, there were some students who tended to get a bit carried away with things. I'm not going to mention the subjects that they got carried away about because then people listening to the programme will get carried away with me for suggesting that the subjects they got carried away about in the early 90s were subjects they were quite right to get carried away about, and that it's silly of me to suggest that they were silly for getting carried away with the subjects that they got carried away with in the 1990s. Whew, so some students in Manchester have, in my view, got a bit carried away with the presence or the appearance of a poem by Rudyard Kipling on the wall of their student union, and because the student union is student-run, they decided to remove the poem. Cue a wall of gammon going absolutely apoplectic, and we're trying to work out why. What is it that perhaps people like me are missing when I say silly old students? You should read Kipling. He's brilliant. He's a 19th century writer, so obviously he subscribes to an awful lot of things that we have now evolved from and moved on from, and you're perfectly entitled not to want it on the wall of your student union. But why the fury? And you go, why the massive, massive anger from people who presumably are not what you would necessarily describe as Rudyard Kipling scholars? Otherwise, they'd know that his subscription to colonialist thinking and white supremacism is absolutely beyond debate. David is in Great Missenden. David, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. I'd actually like to get your opinion on something, which is how far do we go towards separating the art from
I don't mean to be rude, but if you present a radio show and I ring it, then I answer your questions.
Right, okay. Well, look, I'll try and say what I think. Yes. I think that Kipling and Churchill are just the kind of the scapegoats for a lot of ill feeling towards these sort of highly respected figures. And, you know, I know I'm a film critic. I know people who say, oh, we can't enjoy Annie Hall or Chinatown anymore because Woody Allen and Roman Polanski, and so we can't enjoy Kipling anymore, and we shouldn't, you know...
well, no. There was no point. I mean, Woody Allen denies, of course, all of the allegations levelled at him. Roman Polanski has been convicted, so we can talk about him in the context of cultural norms.
Yeah,
I don't know. Hang on a minute. No one ever says that kind of raping 14-year-old girls was normal behaviour.
No, that's true, but I'm just...
So there's no parallel between Polanski and Kipling.
Well, I'm saying that if you're going to separate the artist from the art in any way...
But no one's saying that Kipling shouldn't... No one's saying don't read Kipling. No one's saying ban his books, burn them. They're just saying, I don't want it on the wall of my sitting room.
Right. Okay. But
I mean,
why
I'm a big fan of William Blake. Can I come round and put a William Blake poem on your sitting room wall, or is that decision for you to take?
Well, I mean, that's fine, but, did the students take a vote and decide that it was it wasn't the kind of thing they wanted displayed in their on their student union wall?
Yes.
They did, and that's how these guys led to painting it over.
Yes.
So they probably would have objected to a Churchill statue in the
Well, I don't know, but that's not what you asked me.
But
yes.
Why
then can I come round your house and paint whatever I want on your wall?
Well, that sounds a bit fatuous, don't you think? I mean, I'm trying to say, like, why Kipling, why Churchill, why not many other 19th century figures with, or 20th century figures for that matter, with slightly dodgy...
Yes, but no one is suggesting that their work should be banned. They're just saying they don't want it on their wall. It's not fatuous at all, mate. I mean, in fact, if it is fatuous and it's demolished your position so easily, what does that make you?
Okay.
It's 11:38. Dave's in Brentwood. Dave, what would you like to say?
Hello, James. How you doing?
I'm good, Dave. What's on your mind?
I'm not going to get involved in a very high-level intellectual argument with you because I'm probably not clever enough.
Don't be ridiculous.
What I will say, surely it would be better for the students to put up something, some form of counter-argument to create a discussion about it.
There's no argument with if. If's not a poem that is problematical in any way, shape or form.
Yeah, but surely if you're just shutting it down, it's not. Surely
but it's their wall.
Both ways.
Well, free speech doesn't mean I can come and do graffiti on your bedroom wall, mate.
But
does it? Or maybe it does. Can I come around now?
Well, yeah, why not? But this isn't their bedroom wall, is it?
It's their social space. It's their student union, and the students decided they didn't want the poem. I mean, what business is that of yours or mine?
But what happens if there were students who had...
Don't do what happens if. We're talking about this story. We're not talking about one that you've just made up.
Well, it always seems that free speech is only acceptable if they...
But we've just established, Dave, that free speech in this context would allow me to write whatever I wanted on your kitchen wall. That's not free speech.
But we're being... You have to be tolerant of the people who are being...
Well, you have to be tolerant of what I write on your kitchen wall, then.
Come round and write it, James. I would be. But
don't
free
be
speech,
silly.
It needs to work both ways.
What do you mean it needs to work both ways?
Any form of free speech is acceptable so long as it agrees with the Liberals.
What do you mean the Liberals? It's a poem that they don't want on their wall. So I like you, Dave, and I don't want you to go away because, I mean, you realise now that this free speech argument is utterly ridiculous, and you realise now that you've used the word liberal as an insult when liberal means a belief in freedom. But what I'd love you to tell me... This
is why I opened the conversation with explaining my lack of intelligence.
Well, I don't like people describing... Don't describe yourself as unintelligent, because you're clearly not. But you have felt the little stirrings of anger about this story, and I want you to tell me why, because it's nothing to do with...
I got anger about hundreds of stories going on at the moment, but as soon as I mention anything, people just shut you down of being racist, right-wing...
But they don't, mate, because this is on page 31 of the second best-selling newspaper in the whole country, so the idea that this kind of attitude, your attitude, is being stifled is palpably absurd. So when you heard that some students in Manchester had painted a wall in their student union, tell me, in as many words as you want, or as few words as you want, why you cared.
I cared enough to ring you up because I feel passionate about it. I would never read the Daily Mail because I don't read that kind of stuff.
No, that's not what I asked you. I asked you when you heard that some students had painted a wall in Manchester, a room you're never going to go in, and a poem that you either know about or don't know about. Why did you care?
Because I cared enough because I thought, oh, that's typical of students. You wouldn't get it if it was in a white van meeting, would you? White van man.
You wouldn't get what, Dave?
Well, you wouldn't get a load of white van men writing on, covering up and allegedly, in your words, a poem that people can disagree with because it doesn't agree with today's...
No. This poem is utterly unproblematical. It's some of the other stuff that Rudyard Kipling wrote is racist. It's white supremacist, and that was a commonplace attitude in the 19th century. So, what do you mean you wouldn't get...
That's going to be written out of history one day, isn't it?
No, well, so you're worried again about things that aren't happening.
Because they are...
You think Rudyard Kipling is going to be written out of history? You think they're going to remove... No, Dave, you can't. You just keep talking. It doesn't mean you're thinking. Here's the point. Why did you care about a room in Manchester you've never been in being painted by some students who decided what they wanted on their own wall? How have you ended up being so manipulated that you think this matters?
It's not a case of being manipulated.
Oh, it is, Dave.
You're very, very clever, Mr. O'Brien. You
no,
really
I'm not,
are,
Dave.
but-
I just asked really simple questions, and I'm asking you one now. Why
Yeah, but
did you
know how to
care
back up
about
and
this
argue your
wall?
Really simple questions.
Why did you
I
care
do
about
care.
this wall in
I do
Manchester?
care.
Why?
Because it's just the small thing that's going to go on to bigger things.
Well, like what, though, Dave?
Well, not like taking down Winston Churchill's statues, like shutting down Winston Churchill's cafe.
When is that? No, Winston Churchill's cafe hasn't been shut down. Some silly people protested about it, and then other people
Well,
can
what
turn
gives
around
them
and
the
say,
right to feel they can do that?
well, because you just said freedom of speech was important, Dave.
Yeah, freedom of speech is important. But
Well,
the
hang on.
only
You just said
freedom of
what
speech
gives
is
them the
freedom of
right to
speech.
protest. The answer to the question is the thing you rang in to defend: freedom of speech, Dave.
I understand that, but
Right. So why do you care? Because all I want you to do is not care. All I want you to do is let go of this bolus of anger that is inside you about some
because
kids.
you have to care both ways. I would care
Go
if
on.
it was done, if it was something that was very, what do you call it? What's the word? Communism.
So you've
It's
got.
the
So you
totally
think there's two sides here, and you think that
Well, there
the
should be. There should
anti-racists are allowed to paint their wall, but the racists wouldn't be allowed to put up their racist stuff. That's what you've ended
Wouldn't
up
even
arguing.
be allowed to open their mouth.
Oh, Dave, I thought you were going to deny that. So what you're cross about is the fact that you're not allowed to be racist in public, but you are allowed to be anti-racist.
No, not racist.
What then, mate?
Not even racist.
What then, mate?
Racism is just a word that gets bandied around. You're not
No,
allowed
it
to
isn't
any
just
form of-
Dave. Racism isn't just a word that gets bandied around. Racism
Why
is an
can't-
ideology that teaches your ethnicity or your skin colour somehow defines your value. So, I mean, you might want to think.
Discussing ideologies. We'll be discussing the other one, which you would instantly discuss me and probably shut me down for being Islamophobic. Describe me as a word that doesn't even exist.
So why have we gone there now, you see? So, I mean,
because it's
I know
a
this
whole
isn't your
argument.
intention, but you are cross about a wall in Manchester being painted because you don't like Muslims. How has that happened, Dave?
I haven't mentioned Muslims.
Well, what's Islamophobia then?
What's Islam? It's like if I was to
What do
say
you call
something
people that follow Islam?
Islamists. But if I
Or
was to say anything for or against that, I would be right or wrong.
So you're cross about a wall in Manchester being painted over, a poem by Rudyard Kipling that you weren't previously aware of, because you feel that you're not allowed to say vile things about Muslims.
You're not allowed to say anything about Muslims.
So you're agreeing with me then?
Anything.
That's why you're cross.
You're not allowed to say. You're not.
Mate,
allowed
I
to say
am
anything.
so grateful to you. I really am. I didn't think you'd be that honest.
I'm not saying you're condescending or patronising, Mr. O'Brien, but
mate, you can't. You can own condescending and patronising. They're just words. I'm happy to see you exercising your freedom of speech, but to come on national radio and say I'm cross about some students painting a wall in Manchester because I feel that I'm not allowed to say disgusting things about Muslims in
No,
public.
you're not. No, James.
That's
take out the
incredible.
word disgusting. You need to take out the word
So
disgusting.
what is it? What are the things you think you're not allowed to say then, Dave?
You're not allowed to say anything about.
Go on, say something that you think you're not allowed to say.
You're just trying to get me to say something that I really shouldn't say.
No,
James,
no,
you're a nice guy.
just say it, Dave.
Our views are
Say it, Dave. It's the
polar-
only way you can prove it. You can
No,
say
no.
the thing you're not allowed to say, Dave.
This is starting to sound like it sounded like the Bill Grundy Sex Pistols interview. I'm not going to be coerced into saying something that I shouldn't.
You already
And I
have.
really wouldn't. Okay. All I want, honestly, all
There's
I
a
want,
room
James,
somewhere,
I
Dave.
wish everyone in the whole world could get on and there was peace.
Of course you do, Dave. Of course you do. But you want to say things about Muslims that you're not allowed to say. How does that make the world more peaceful?
You've taken because you've taken it out of context. You
I've
really
repeated your own words back to you. You told me you're cross about some paint on a wall in Manchester because you feel that society would judge you unfairly if you said something horrible about Muslims. Not horrible,
have.
James. You can't say anything about
I
Muslims.
didn't say horrible.
So tell me the thing you can't say. What's the thing you can't say?
Okay, I think we'll leave it here, James.
Go on,
but I think
Dave.
there's
No,
probably
seriously,
tens of
what's the
thousands of
thing?
people who get my point.
What is the point, Dave? Say the thing you can't say, Dave.
I'm not going to, James.
Okay, but it's not
great
horrible.
show as ever.
It's not horrible in any way, shape, or form.
No, it's not.
And
It's
you're still
honest.
cross about some
Honest.
paint. You're still cross about some paint on a wall in Manchester,
because it's wrong.
right?
In my day, that was called graffiti, and you would get up against the school board for
Well,
it.
the graffiti would be the poem that was put there in the first place, which you rang in to say should have been left there, and now you're making a case against graffiti. On a scale of 1 to 10, Dave, how well do you think this call has gone for you?
It's not about how it's gone for me.
I think you'll find it is, pal. It's 11:47. If you see Dave today, be gentle. And we turn our attention next to one of those stories that we very much file under the title "Things that would get loads more attention if Brexit hadn't sent the entire country crackers," because it would appear some quality reporting by the Times newspaper that the Conservative Chief Whip Julian Smith urged 3 Tory MPs to abandon pairing arrangements before one of those knife-edge Brexit votes on Tuesday. This is the claim reported in the Times today. By way of brief explanation, Jo Swinson, for example, was away from the chamber because she is on maternity leave. The arrangement is made between the 2 whips' offices that because Jo Swinson can't be there, they will find a Conservative who can be there, but make sure he's not there in order to balance each other's vote out. It's just cancel out the absence, as it were. And in the case of Jo Swinson, it was the Tory party chairman, no less, Brandon Lewis, who was supposed to avoid the vote. But he voted. Jo Swinson got a little bit suspicious, at which point Julian Smith, the chief whip, apologised and said that a mistake had happened. And then the Times picked up the phone and started making some calls. Sam Coates is one of the journalists responsible for this story. He's the deputy political editor at The Thunderer, and he joins me now. What happened next, Sam Coates?
Well, it appears, basically for the last 24 hours, I have been picking up stories about other Conservative MPs who were asked on Tuesday whether or not they too would break their pairing arrangements that meant that they weren't meant to vote at the last minute and go and vote in these knife-edge votes on Brexit. Now, in the case of Brandon Lewis, he got his instructions directly from Julian Smith, we understand the report today, and went off and voted because he was told to by the chief whip. In the case of the other 2, they got their instruction from the chief whip, but both of them thought, hang on, I'm not too sure about this, checked with somebody else and decided not to follow the instruction and stayed away from the vote as per the agreement, which in and of itself is fascinating, tells you a little bit about their individual views of the chief whip, I suspect. But what it does is it undermines the government claim that this was entirely an innocent mistake, because it appears to suggest that there is a pattern of behaviour here of the chief whip trying to undermine or break the pairing system. Now, fascinatingly, we've heard nothing from the chief whip. When I put it to his office last night, they said they weren't going to be able to get back to us. There's been silence ever since then. We are told to expect a statement from Conservative headquarters shortly. I noticed from Twitter other journalists are talking to Tory MPs and finding similar stories, so it has the smell of something relatively serious. And Andrea Leadsom in the House, responding to giving the first hint of the government response just in the last few minutes, is still maintaining the line that it was, as far as she knows, it was an innocent mistake, one of those things.
An administrative error, I think, is the phrase she's employed as well. How does the dam break if your suspicions prove correct and there is a kind of chain of command involved in this rather than a misunderstanding? What breaks the dam? Because we've, like you, been trying to get a comment on this. We were called Downing Street, got referred to the Cabinet Office, called the Cabinet Office, got referred to CCHQ, got called CCHQ, got told to send an email, sent an email, haven't had a reply. I mean, this is your daily experience, Sam.
Well, this is why you need people inside the House of Commons who can just march down to the House of Commons chamber and collar people. That's why you have journalists inside the House of Commons, and that's what we're doing. We're all waiting. I tell you what breaks the dam.
Yeah.
What breaks the dam are other Tory MPs getting very, very upset, because the pairing system doesn't benefit the opposition. It benefits every single person in Parliament. You know, some people have maternity leave, but other people have sick relatives, and other people have urgent business, and other people need to go to their kids' prize giving. Sometimes there are important votes. If the Conservative MPs turn on their own chief whip, do not trust him, and say so in public, that breaks the dam. Now, the one thing that Julian Smith has got in his favour is that it's almost the end of term and everyone's carrying their wheelie cases around in Parliament just now, meaning that he could just about get away with this by the skin of his teeth because it's holiday time.
So just hang on until the finishing line, regardless of how much embarrassment occurs between now and then.
Works these days.
A bit like a Chris Grayling interview. While you're here, Sam Coates, what the Philip Davis is going on?
I was watching the commentary. Somebody around me was shouting about Philip Davis. So he's put in a letter of no confidence about Theresa May. Is that correct?
Yes. Why are you asking me? You're the deputy political editor of the Times.
Because I only have 2 eyes, 2 ears. So where we are with that is that Brexiteer fury is massive, but for whatever reason, there's a different essay in question, they have not decided to press the button by calling that vote of no confidence in Theresa May. And at last night's 1922 committee meeting, in front of all of the MPs, an MP called Simon Clarke, now I haven't heard of him either, stood up and said, I put in one of those letters, but I'm now withdrawing it because I realised I was wrong, and Theresa May's the only person to go off and negotiate that deal. The big picture of where we are with Theresa May and her parliamentary party is, I think she's basically survived to reset. She's got there, and there's the 1 or 2 people are putting in letters, and like the guy last night withdrawing them. But she's kind of got there with her party for now. The battles with the grassroots, as we report on the front page this morning, she's going to go up and down the country and win them over, and they look like they're incredibly cross with the Chequers compromise deal that she has brought back and not particularly sold well. So Philip Davies adds one more to that magical tally of how many letters Graham Brady has, 48 being the total needed, but we just don't know how many he's had, and people speculating often just have a finger in the air and just don't know.
So I think you just answered my next question. Would you care to speculate on how many letters that might be?
No, I slightly think that political journalists shouldn't have to gaze into a crystal ball as much and just kind of say what they know.
Indeed,
I couldn't tell you what's going to happen on that, or whether she's still going to.
But there's more likely to be movement
than the end of the year.
More likely to be movement, perhaps, on the Chief Whip story before recess than on the Theresa May story. Although it sounds like you wouldn't put money on either of them necessarily.
Well, let's see. I'm expecting a full-blown denial from
Julian Smith.
On Julian Smith, if they are to hang on to him.
Right.
Although it's very interesting that ITV News' Robert Peston is hearing text messages saying similar. He's just tweeted about that. So pressure is.
When you say similar, you mean Tory MP saying I was told to vote even though I was paired?
Yeah, he claims he's seen a text. He's tweeted the text of a text message saying this is an order. Please go and vote.
Wow.
I can't vouch for him and his sources, other than to say he's a very good journalist. But all of this will be adding pressure on TTHQ as they work out how to handle it. So I'm just watching my email inbox and waiting for a statement.
Fantastic news. Sam Coates, thank you very much indeed. I've got that Robert Peston quote for you as well that Sam just referred to. He's tweeted, if actually I had it a minute in front of me, but it's disappeared again now for reasons that I don't fully understand. Here you go. I was told by a well-placed source that a Tory backbencher was texted by the Chief Whip with instructions to break pair on Tuesday night. That is an order, not a request, was how the text was retold to me. In the event, the shrewd MP consulted the pairing whip and honoured the pair. But, and the Times, of course, reports today that it appears not just to be Brandon Lewis. Andrea Leadsom has described it as an administrative error. And again, I would suggest to you, this is a story that would be setting the Westminster world on fire. I mean, it is actually getting quite a lot of traction and coverage, but it would be setting the Westminster world on fire if we were living in normal times. But we're not. We're living in times where half of the country and 60 to 70% of the print media is in unicorn land. Literally reflecting a reality that doesn't exist. So Brexit today has, in a sense, corrupted everything. Even, it would seem, because all of these votes were about Brexit, the potential honour of MPs. Because if they have been told to do this, as some of them now have claimed, more than one have apparently claimed, journalists I trust, Sam Coates at the Times, Robert Peston at ITV, then the question becomes, will they be prepared to go public with it and embarrass, if you like, the party and possibly render the position of the Chief Whip untenable? I don't know. Wait and see. Sadly, we've run out of time. I was quite looking forward to having more calls about why people are cross about students in Manchester painting a wall because they're not allowed to be Islamophobic in public. An incredible call that. And I know Dave will be feeling all cross and sad, but I really hope, Dave, you think about how on earth you've ended up thinking that anti-racists are the enemy because you think you're not allowed to say some things open a newspaper, show me where this world is, that people aren't allowed to be incredibly negative and rude about Islam. Go and look at Sadiq Khan's Twitter feed. Show me this mythical land where Islamophobia is not permitted, Dave. Seriously, and then I'll come round to your house and paint on your kitchen wall.